I quit Evernote. Let me explain. Evernote was one of the quintessential note-taking apps on the market back when I first started using it. You could even argue that it is still the quintessential note-taking app. I mean, there are plenty of others that have come along the way, and we're not going to count Microsoft Word or Google Docs or anything like that. Those are more or less document-making apps or word processing apps. We're talking about making notes. And Evernote was the king. Evernote had a folder structuring and a tagging option that really put it head and shoulders above the rest. I didn't even mind that Evernote had its own proprietary file format, which made it very difficult to pull notes out and then put them into something else without having a lot of weirdness happen along the way. But then Evernote started to add more elements to the mix. Elements, honestly, that would have worked. Things like Evernote Food, Evernote Hello. I used those apps when they first came out and they showed promise. Then they had the store where they made backpacks, and then they started to combine with Moleskine. Again, not a bad move, but what was happening is there was not a lot of iteration happening within the app itself. Now, I'm not somebody that needs an app to constantly iterate. I do like having apps that are stable. Change for change's sake is not productive. But Evernote was stagnant in every aspect except for maybe its leadership, where they started to rotate from original leadership to temporary leadership to even more temporary leadership.
Houston, we have a problem.
And now there seems to be more stable elements in their leadership. And I have noticed things like the home area and Evernote tasks. Frankly, too little, too late. Plus, I never thought of Evernote as a task management option. All of these things are starting to come to pass, but there are still things that I don't enjoy about using the app. It takes a long time for me to load notes in Evernote. In fact, when I tried to log into Evernote on my desktop machine, I walked away and came back and it was still loading all of my notes. All of these hiccups and roadblocks started to really have me think about whether or not I should be still using the app after all these years. Was I just sticking around because it was familiar? The answer is yes. I was sticking around with Evernote because, frankly, everything is already in there. I'm so used to using it. It would take a lot to get the notes out of there and reorganize them. I'm so used to doing things the Evernote way. Those are all things that kept me from casting aside Evernote and moving into something that was going to be more suitable for my needs now. I know a lot of people will still get a lot out of Evernote, and that's fine. I think it is a fine product for what it is, but I think it could have been so much more, and I think it still can be. But there are other contenders to the crown, especially now that we are dealing with an era of personal knowledge management software. Apps like Notion, Roam, Craft, and the one that I've chosen to move my stuff from Evernote into, as well as add things into it going forward, Obsidian. Why am I choosing Obsidian over Evernote or even over some of the other options out there? I love the fact that it's plain text. I love the fact that I can move things in and out of there fairly easily. I love the way it just handles my notes, my knowledge, my research, all of that stuff. And it does it in a way that's very different from Evernote, in a way that I think is better. But it took me a long time to come to that realization. It took me a long time to say, hey, you know what? It's time for me to pull things out of Evernote bit by bit and put them into an app that I feel that I can trust far more than I trust Evernote. The only way I'm going to be able to make that happen as quickly as I need it to happen is by saying goodbye to Evernote. If I want to get the most out of Obsidian, I'm going to have to do the same thing that I did when I adopted Evernote as my note-taking app of choice. I was going to have to use it exclusively. And that meant no stickies. That meant no other note-taking app could be used. And the same thing applies today. So I'm saying goodbye to Evernote. I canceled my premium account. I've uninstalled the app from my devices. I'm only using the web-based version and the desktop version as I migrate notes from there into Obsidian. And what's interesting is there's some notes in there that I'm just getting rid of. So instead of doing a wholesale export and then import, I'm doing things bit by bit. I've put myself in a position where Obsidian is front and center and not Evernote. So goodbye, Evernote. Thank you for the many years of use, but it's time for me to move on. Take care, and I'll see you later.